And brand new research published just 3 weeks ago is going to make you question everything you've been told about blood pressure. For decades, doctors have said the same thing. The ideal blood pressure is 120/80. That's the goal. That's what everyone should aim for. Lower is better.
A major medical study released just a few weeks ago is forcing the medical world to rethink one of the most trusted rules in healthcare. For decades, the message has been simple and repeated everywhere. The ideal blood pressure is 120/80. That is the number everyone should aim for. Lower is better. The closer you get to that number, the safer you are. But what if that advice is not always true? What if, for older adults, that so-called perfect number is actually dangerous? New research shows that for people over the age of 65, aggressively lowering blood pressure to 120/80 may increase the risk of falls, fainting, brain injury, kidney damage, and even death. My name is Dr. Claire Whitmore. I have spent more than 20 years working in cardiovascular medicine. And today I am going to explain why the blood pressure target you have been taught to trust may not be right for your age.
But I am not going to tell you the correct number yet. Not because I want to hide it, but because if I give you the number right now, many people will write it down and stop listening, and that could be dangerous. Before you know the right number, you need to understand something critical. The body of an older adult does not function the same way as the body of a younger person. And when blood pressure is pushed too low later in life, the consequences can be severe. Before we talk about the safe target, you need to see what actually happens when an older person is pushed to reach the so-called ideal blood pressure. Because for seniors, lower is not always safer. In some cases, lower can be deadly. Before we continue, write your age and your most recent blood pressure reading in the comments. Just the numbers and your age. This information matters. Now, I want to tell you a real story. This story will permanently change how you think about blood pressure. Her name was Eleanor.
Eleanor was 78 years old when I first reviewed her case. She had been diagnosed with high blood pressure 10 years earlier when she was 68. At the time of diagnosis, her blood pressure was 152/88. Her doctor immediately started her on blood pressure medication. 2 months later, her blood pressure dropped to 138/82. Her doctor was pleased. He said they were making progress, but the goal had not yet been reached. The goal was still the same, 120/80. The medication dose was increased. 2 months later, Eleanor's blood pressure became 128/76. Better, but still not at the ideal target. A second medication was added. Her doctor told her that reaching 120/80 would give her the lowest risk of heart attack and stroke. Eleanor trusted her doctor completely. She had been seeing him for 20 years.
If he said this was the safest number, she believed him. She took her medications exactly as prescribed. She checked her blood pressure regularly at home. She did everything she was told. Eventually, her blood pressure reached 122/78. Her doctor was thrilled. He told her that her blood pressure was now perfect, exactly where it should be. At first, Eleanor felt mostly fine. She noticed she was a bit more tired than usual, but she assumed that was normal at her age. Then something strange began to happen. Every time she stood up from sitting, she felt dizzy. The room would spin for a few seconds. She had to hold on to something until it passed. She mentioned this to her doctor. He told her this was normal for older adults. He explained that aging blood vessels do not adjust as quickly as they used to. He told her to stand up more slowly. Eleanor followed that advice. She stood very slowly, but the dizziness did not stop.
It became more frequent. Every time she got out of bed, every time she stood up from the couch, every time she rose from a chair. Without realizing it, Eleanor began to move cautiously. She became afraid of standing up. Her daughter noticed the change. She said, "Mom, you move like you are afraid of falling." Eleanor explained the dizziness. Her daughter suggested she speak to the doctor again. Eleanor called the clinic and left a message. A nurse called her back. The message was the same. As long as her blood pressure looked good, the dizziness was considered age-related. She was told to drink more water. Several months later, one morning, Eleanor woke up and needed to use the bathroom. She sat on the edge of the bed. She placed her feet on the floor. She stood up. Everything happened instantly. The room spun violently. Her legs gave out. She reached for the nightstand but missed. She fell hard. Her right hip struck the corner of the table.
She landed on the floor and could not get up. The pain was severe. Her husband heard the crash and rushed into the room. He found Eleanor crying and unable to move her leg. An ambulance was called. Paramedics checked her blood pressure while she was lying down. It was 118/74. They checked it while she was sitting. It dropped to 94/62. They checked it while she was standing. It dropped again to 82/54. This was not normal aging. This was severe blood pressure drop with position changes. The medications that made her blood pressure look perfect while lying down made her body unable to maintain blood flow when standing. Her brain was not getting enough blood. That caused the dizziness, and that caused the fall. At the hospital, imaging showed that Eleanor's hip was completely fractured. She required hip replacement surgery. At 78 years old, surgery carried serious risks.
But there was no alternative. The surgery itself went well, but recovery was extremely difficult. Eleanor spent 1 week in the hospital. Then she was transferred to a rehabilitation facility. Before the fall, Eleanor lived independently. She did her own shopping. She attended church. She visited friends. After the fall, everything changed. She needed help walking, help dressing, help bathing. She felt as if she had aged decades in just a few weeks. And this is where the real tragedy began.
After Eleanor returned home from rehabilitation, she was not the same person. Before the fall, she was active and confident. She moved freely through her home. She went out when she wanted. She lived independently. After the fall, fear controlled her life. She was afraid to walk without assistance, afraid to stand up too quickly, afraid to be alone. Her daughter stayed with her to help. Eleanor spent most of her time sitting or lying down. She moved less and less. Her muscles weakened. Her lungs did not expand as fully. Her body slowly deconditioned. 6 months later, Eleanor developed pneumonia. At 79 years old, pneumonia is extremely dangerous. Her body was too weak to fight the infection. She was hospitalized. She was given antibiotics and oxygen. It was not enough. Eleanor died 3 days later. Her daughter was devastated. She said something that stayed with me forever. She said my mother was fine before her blood pressure was pushed so low.
She said everything changed after that fall. And she was right. Eleanor did not die because her blood pressure was too high. She died because it was pushed too low for her body to handle. And yet her doctor believed he was doing the right thing. He followed the guidelines he had been taught. He believed that 120/80 was perfect. So how can a perfect number kill someone? The answer is simple, but uncomfortable. One number does not fit every age, especially not in older adults. To understand why, you need to understand how the aging body handles blood pressure. Let us start with blood vessels. When you are young, your arteries are flexible. They expand and contract easily with each heartbeat. They help absorb pressure and maintain steady blood flow. As you age, those arteries slowly become stiffer. This process is natural. It happens to everyone. Stiff arteries cannot adjust as quickly when your position changes.
When an older adult stands up, blood briefly pools in the legs. In younger people, flexible arteries and fast reflexes compensate instantly. In older adults, that compensation is slower. If blood pressure is already low, there may not be enough force to push blood back up to the brain. That is when dizziness happens. That is when falls happen. The second issue involves pressure sensors in the body. Your body has special sensors in the blood vessels that monitor pressure constantly. They send signals to your brain to speed up the heart or tighten vessels when pressure drops. These sensors work very well in younger people. They react quickly. With age, these sensors become less sensitive. Their response is delayed. So when an older person stands up, the body does not react fast enough. If blood pressure is aggressively lowered, the drop becomes dangerous. This condition is called orthostatic hypotension. It simply means blood pressure drops too much when standing.
And it is one of the leading causes of falls in seniors. The third issue is medication sensitivity. As people age, the kidneys and liver do not process medications the same way. Drugs stay in the body longer. Their effects are stronger. A dose that is safe for a 50-year-old can be too strong for an 80-year-old. This is especially true for blood pressure medications. They can lower pressure too much. They can cause dizziness. They can cause weakness. They can cause confusion. And often, these symptoms are blamed on aging rather than medication. The fourth issue is risk balance. In younger adults, the biggest danger of high blood pressure is long-term damage, heart disease, stroke, kidney failure over decades. In older adults, the danger of low blood pressure is immediate. A fall at 80 can start a chain of events that leads to death within months. So the calculation changes.
Preventing a fall today may be more important than preventing a heart attack 10 years from now. This is why blood pressure targets must change with age. Now let us talk about what research actually shows. For many years, guidelines were based on studies of middle-aged adults, people in their 40s, 50s, and early 60s. Those studies showed that lower blood pressure reduced heart attacks and strokes. That is true for that age group. But older adults were often excluded from these studies, especially those over 75, especially those who were frail or had multiple medical conditions. Later studies tried to apply the same targets to everyone. That is when problems began to appear. Some studies showed that very low blood pressure in older adults was linked to higher death rates, higher fall rates, more kidney injury, more hospitalizations. At first, many doctors ignored these findings. They did not fit the existing belief system.
But newer research has become harder to ignore. Large observational studies following real-world older adults began to show a pattern. Older adults with moderately controlled blood pressure lived longer than those with very low pressure. Those with extremely low pressure had more falls and more complications. Those with extremely high pressure had more strokes. The safest outcomes were often in the middle. This does not mean high blood pressure is harmless. It means that overtreatment can be just as dangerous as undertreatment, especially in seniors. Another important concept is systolic versus diastolic pressure. The top number is systolic pressure. It reflects the force when the heart pumps. The bottom number is diastolic pressure. It reflects pressure when the heart relaxes. As people age, systolic pressure tends to rise. Diastolic pressure often stays the same or decreases. This creates a wider gap between the two numbers. This is normal in older adults.
The danger comes when diastolic pressure drops too low. During the relaxation phase of the heartbeat, the heart itself receives blood flow. If diastolic pressure is too low, the heart and brain may not receive enough blood. This can cause fatigue, confusion, standing. That is exactly what happened to Eleanor. Another critical issue is brain blood flow. The brain sits at the top of the body. Blood must travel upward against gravity. In younger people, this is not a problem. In older people, it requires adequate pressure. If blood pressure drops too low, brain blood flow decreases. Not enough to cause immediate damage, but enough to cause symptoms: lightheadedness, trouble concentrating, memory issues, fatigue.
Many seniors assume these symptoms are part of aging. In reality, they may be signs of inadequate brain perfusion.
Some studies suggest that very low blood pressure in late life may contribute to cognitive decline. This is still being studied, but the concern is real. The brain needs steady blood flow to function properly. Too little pressure for too long may accelerate mental decline. Now let us talk about kidneys. The kidneys filter blood constantly. They require sufficient pressure to do their job. In older adults, kidney function is already reduced. If blood pressure is lowered too aggressively, kidney perfusion decreases. This can lead to acute kidney injury. In some cases, kidney function never fully recovers. Doctors sometimes see rising creatinine levels after aggressive blood pressure treatment in seniors. This is not always coincidence. Again, balance is critical. Not too high, not too low. Another major factor is frailty. Frailty is not just age. It is a measure of strength, mobility, endurance, and resilience.
A frail 75-year-old may respond very differently than a robust 75-year-old. This is why age alone cannot determine blood pressure targets. The whole person must be considered. This brings us to an important truth. Blood pressure management in older adults must be individualized. They are measured on those numbers. Sometimes quality of life is unintentionally ignored. Now I want you to think about your own experience. Do you ever feel dizzy when standing? Do you feel weak or lightheaded? Do you feel more tired since your blood pressure medications were increased? If so, these are not normal signs of aging. They may be warning signs. In the next part, I am going to explain what blood pressure ranges are actually safer for different age groups. I will explain how targets change after 65.
After 75, and in frail adults. I will also explain how to check at home for dangerous blood pressure drops. And I will give you a step-by-step framework you can discuss with your doctor. But before we go there, you need to understand one more thing. Numbers alone do not matter. Function matters. Stability matters. Independence matters. In the next section, we will talk about how to find the right balance for your body.
Now we come to the most important question. If 120/80 is not always safe for older adults, then what number is? The answer may surprise you. There is no single perfect number, but there are safer ranges, and more importantly, there are warning signs that matter more than any number on a screen. Let us start with what modern research and geriatric cardiology now agree on. For adults under 60, tighter blood pressure control often provides long-term benefits. Lower numbers reduce future heart attacks and strokes. But after 65, the balance changes. After 75, it changes even more. And for frail adults at any age above 65, aggressive lowering can be harmful. Many experts now agree on a more flexible approach. For most adults over 65 who are otherwise stable, a systolic blood pressure between 130 and 145 is often safer. This range provides enough pressure to maintain brain, heart, and kidney blood flow while still reducing stroke risk. For adults over 75, especially those with dizziness, falls, or weakness, systolic values up to 150 may be acceptable and sometimes safer. This does not mean blood pressure should be ignored. It means it should be managed with wisdom, not fear. Now let us talk about the bottom number. Diastolic pressure is often overlooked, but in seniors it is critical. Many experts caution against allowing diastolic pressure to drop below 65 in older adults. When diastolic pressure falls too low, blood flow to the heart and brain suffers. Symptoms may include fatigue, confusion, lightheadedness, and unsteadiness. If you often see numbers like 120/60 or 115/58, that may look good on paper, but it can be dangerous for an older body, especially if symptoms are present.
Now let us talk about symptoms. Symptoms are your body speaking, and they matter more than guidelines.
If you experience dizziness when standing, if you feel weak or lightheaded, if you feel unusually tired, if you feel mentally foggy, if you have fallen or nearly fallen, these are red flags. They suggest that blood pressure may be too low for your body, even if your doctor says the numbers look good. Now I want to teach you something very important: how to check for dangerous blood pressure drops at home. This simple test can save lives. It is called a position change blood pressure check. Here is how to do it. First, lie down quietly for 5 minutes. Then measure your blood pressure while lying down. Next, sit up. Wait 1 minute. Measure your blood pressure again. Then stand up carefully. Wait 1 minute. Measure your blood pressure again. If your systolic pressure drops by 20 or more points, or your diastolic drops by 10 or more points, this is not normal.
If you feel dizzy or unsteady during the test, that is also significant. This information is extremely valuable to your doctor. Yet many doctors never check this unless asked. Now let us talk about medication adjustments. Never stop blood pressure medication suddenly. That can be dangerous. But medication doses can often be adjusted. Sometimes reducing a dose slightly can eliminate dizziness without raising stroke risk. Sometimes removing one medication can dramatically improve stability. This must be done under medical supervision, but it starts with awareness. You cannot advocate for yourself if you believe lower is always better. Now let us talk about a very important concept: quality of life. Living longer does not matter if you cannot live well. For older adults, maintaining independence may be more important than achieving perfect numbers. Avoiding falls may save more lives than chasing aggressive targets. Walking confidently, thinking clearly, staying engaged.
These are signs of good blood pressure control in seniors. Now I want to speak directly to caregivers and family members. If your parent or loved one became weaker, more confused, or more unstable after blood pressure medication was increased, pay attention. Do not assume it is aging. Ask questions. Request position change blood pressure checks. Ask whether the current target is appropriate for their age and health status. Advocacy matters. Now let us summarize the key truths. 120/80 is not a universal goal, especially not for older adults. Blood pressure targets must change with age and frailty. Too low can be just as dangerous as too high. Symptoms matter more than numbers. Falls can be deadly. Stability saves lives. Now I want to leave you with one final thought. Your body is not a machine. It is a living system that changes with time. What protected you at 50 may harm you at 80. Good medicine adapts.
If you take only one message from this video, let it be this: do not chase a number at the cost of your safety. Chase balance. Chase stability. Chase quality of life. If this information helped you, share it with someone you love who is over 65. It may protect them from a fall. It may protect them from unnecessary suffering, and it may save a life. Thank you for listening.